Today's Cowboys Report is made possible by Roan. You can get 20% off by going over to roan.com/chatsports and picking up a polo like the one I am wearing today. We're going to break down Dalvin Cook after some comments by Jerry Jones, by McCarthy, ESPN. Didn't plan to make it the entire show, but ended up being a lot more interesting notes I wanted to get into as part of this whole conversation. So would you give Dalvin Cook a chance? Y for yes, N for no in the comment section of today's video. With the ground game struggling, which was the concern so many of us had going into the year, a lot of you have wondered, it's been asked of Jerry Jones, McCarthy, well, what about Dalvin Cook? Does he get a chance to showcase what he's able to do? Do you try playing him? I wanted to break down what was said, what the outlook is, and some of the issues this team potentially is going to run into as a result. First, your ground game's not very good. As we'll get into later on, in week 2, you had so many good opportunities to run the ball against light boxes, against neutral boxes, and you were wholly unable to do so. Very poor results in that phase and in that result. It just didn't go well. Dowdle's got 1 missed tackle on the ground. He's got 5 first downs. Zeke has 0 and 3. But he does have the nice touchdown run when the O-line did its job. There's more issues at play here than just the running backs. I do want to make note of that. And we'll tie that in throughout today's show as well. But here's what the owner/general manager technically said about Dalvin Cook. I don't necessarily see a change that would involve Cook this week. I like what we are with our running backs. We've got good depth. We just didn't get to run them enough Sunday. I would frankly mostly ignore Jerry. It's Jerry. He's also wrong. They didn't run the ball well. Like, they ran it a bunch, actually. They ran it plenty. They were wildly inefficient. Now, as it specifically relates to the Dalvin Cook element, he might be right at the moment. It might not be quite the right time to deploy Dalvin Cook, and maybe this staff doesn't think he's ready. That's kind of what Mike McCarthy had said. Dalvin looks good. Understand that a big thing for a vet is just the terminology and, frankly, just the language adjustment. I think he has progressed very nicely since he's been here. He's as natural of an outside zone runner that I've competed against. He looks good. He's getting there. We might not like it, and I get if you don't like it. The reality of this spot is that you've put yourself in. When it comes to when you're going to see Dalvin Cook play, it's all in the shoulders and trust and faith in the coaching staff. We don't get to see Dalvin Cook out there at training camp practices and you can know, oh yeah, he's looked really good. All the reporters saying that, or he looked great in the preseason. You don't see much practice during the actual regular season. No one does. So it is coaching staff's going to know if he's ready or not, and you hope that they can self-identify and self-scout to know if that's the case or not. So if any week we see Dalvin Cook, I guess none is a viable option if you are just convinced he's never going to be an option for the Cowboys. What week do you think Dalvin Cook will end up playing? The ad comes on YouTube. Take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. Look, I know it has only been 2 games, and maybe trying to argue, the running game is a disaster, you got to try stuff, is a slight overreaction. But we had concerns going into the year. You know, this is not like if your best player doesn't play well or Lamb had a drop, is it panicked? I'm like, we'll probably figure it out. You got concerns here. And having to try to do new things and experiment with stuff in the regular season is not great. I acknowledge all of that. But those run game concerns are there. And they haven't just been there for a year. They've frankly been there for longer. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and thinking this time it'll be different. So you kind of need to explore your options out here. You need to figure out, okay, let's try something different. And there is some level of got to be on the coaching staff. Got to trust them to try new things, and that the guys that they are playing really are the best options. And if you have doubts, I get it. But barring a trade, which that happens, this is what you got. Of note, and I want to spend a lot of time on this with a lot of fancy numbers, so stay tuned. The outside zone line really stood out to me as it relates to Dalvin Cook. Now, today's show is made possible by Roan. You guys can get 20% off your Roan order by using promo code CHATSPORTS. I rock the polo constantly. It's in the intro video because it looks awesome. They have products for every occasion, not just polos, by the way. It's pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, blazers, and more. Their signature 4-way stretch fabric is breathable, flexible, and works everywhere from your commute to work to the 19th hole and drinks and golf, whatever it is, Roan has you covered. You've got wrinkle release technology, so the more you wear it, the more the wrinkles come out. And it's machine washable, by the way, because who goes to the dry cleaners? It's 2024. The Commuter Collection gets you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to roan.com/chatsports and use code CHATSPORTS. Save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/chatsports and use code CHATSPORTS. Find your corner office comfort and upgrade your closet with Roan. The link will be in the comments section and the description of today's show. So McCarthy said that Dalvin Cook was an outside zone runner. And there's some great new next-gen stats over on the NFL website that I think are really valuable here. Now, you'll see the inside stats and the outside stats. We can kind of bounce back and forth a little bit there because there's a lot of fancy numbers that maybe you don't understand. So first number you see is the percentage of how many runs were on the inside. And you saw a big jump there with the New York Jets. Yards per carry on runs inside the tackle. Again, you saw some drop-off, which you'll see drop-off pretty consistently here. Rush, RYOE, is rush yards over expected. Again, you want to be positive, not negative. EPA, expected points added, can be boosted by big runs, explosive runs, touchdowns, and dropped by fumbles and stuff. And you can, again, see some regression there. Success rate, like did you get the yards you need to have it be a successful play relative to down and distance? See some okay-ish success rates there. On the outside, you see bigger usage, right? The Vikings running the same damn scheme you just saw against the Saints, by the way. Love to run outside zone. And you see consistent 4.5 to 5 yards per carry. Consistent plus yards over expected. EPA did drop a little bit in 2022. There were some fumbling issues that kind of killed that for Dalvin Cook. Success rate was just better, for the most part, on the outside compared to the inside. So from a numbers perspective, this aligns. Dalvin Cook was better on the outside than he was on the inside, which tracks, I think, from what we saw. Now, I will make note. You see some slightly better efficiency numbers sometimes on the inside. Again, in general, not always, but in general, efficiency tends to drop with greater volume because one or two big plays isn't as impactful as it might be otherwise. And again, this is the Saints scheme we just saw. They ran outside zone. It was Clint Kubiak as the offensive coordinator. He was the quarterback's coach under Kevin Stefanski when Stefanski was the OC in Minnesota under Mike Zimmer. And for the most part, the numbers agree with what McCarthy said. You can go back and look at the comparisons of other players, and you take away the quarterbacks that are only on the outside for the most part, except for Jalen Hurts. He was one of the best outside zone runners in football. And that passes the eye test too, right? And until the decline set in, especially in New York, he was mostly pretty damn good with the Vikings, especially at his best version. But there are, I think, two pretty noteworthy unanswered questions as it specifically relates to this version of Dalvin Cook and this version of the Dallas Cowboys that I want to get into in here in just a moment. Now, first off, we have passed the 195K subscriber mark. Thank you all so much for helping us get there. 195.5 is our next goal. Help us get there. Hit that sub button right now. The number one question is, does Dalvin Cook still have it? Because he didn't have it in New York. And there were some of those signs of decline in Minnesota. He was specifically a little bit worse on inside runs in his last year in Minnesota, which is a big red flag we'll get to here in a second. As it relates to this part, is it Dalvin Cook or Dalvin Cooking? The staff is the only ones we can trust here. If we believe the theory of it was just the Jets, it was just an off year, he's going to be back, only the coaching staff gets to see him. So we have to trust them in terms of seeing it and knowing if he has it or not. The second one is, would you change your scheme? Because if you put Dalvin Cook on a bunch of inside zone runs, right up the middle, with no powers and no counters and not much duo, that ain't going to work because it hasn't worked previously. Your head coach just said that Dalvin Cook is an outside zone runner. Guess what you don't run is outside zone. You ran the ball at the bottom 4 rate in football last week on the outside. Now, these numbers are per Next Gen Stats again. I updated them so you see some slightly different rankings because we got the Monday Night Football results in, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. But you liked inside runs at the top 3. The reason why you're third and bottom 4, respectively, is there's some weird quarterback stuff that kind of gets mixed in there, so there's a slight differentiation on the outside runs. So your head coach says, hey, Dalvin Cook is a great outside zone runner. Your scheme is inside zone. So I don't think it's going to work if you don't align your play calls with what your personnel does best. If the answer is no to either, Dalvin Cook doesn't have it. Well, obviously that's not going to work. We're not going to change our scheme. I don't think giving Dalvin Cook a chance is going to go very well. And in the end, both of those questions are solely in the hands of your staff. Can they evaluate the player properly? And are they willing to put the player in the best position to succeed? They haven't changed their scheme like they should have this past season. Are they going to change it mid-season? I want you guys to grade this offensive coaching staff for me. A, B, C, D, or F. You can let me know in the comments section of today's show. A, B, C, D, or F. There is one more thing I want to get into here. How do you manage this running back rotation? Because if you're going to play Dalvin Cook, let's do more outside zone, which I want to see more outside zone anyway, so I'm probably willing to do whatever it takes to get that to happen. I think that's a good scheme to run. If you're not going to run duo, which you should be doing anyway, but I digress. I think right now, Rico Dowdle is your best back. He offers you more after contact. It's relative, Zeke always falls forward, but he's got 0 force mixed tackles on the ground. I think he also could run outside zone. Even Zeke with Dallas was a bit more of an inside zone guy at his best. Especially with what they have left athletically, I think Dowdle can do more outside zone stuff. Now, Deuce Vaughn gets the fewest carries, so that'd be a logical guy to sit, right? He also has 3/4 of your missed tackles on the ground. That's 3 of the 4. He'd also be a decent fit for outside zone. I think he'd actually be a great fit for duo, which I desperately want to run more of, but I'm kind of giving up that pipe dream, and counters would be so great too. He's also the only one right now that plays on special teams. And Zeke's game, I don't think is outside zone, but he's also Zeke. And if the whole plan was he's your short yardage back, okay, well then he's going to stay. Are you going to demote Dowdle even though he's been your best back? So could you? But if you're going to install his outside zone heavy scheme for a week, don't you want to have your top backup be someone that fits outside zone a little bit better than inside zone and power runs? That's what I would consider. But would you actually do it? Because I kind of feel like the Dalvin Cook signing was Elliott insurance more than anything else. But there's a lot of stuff beyond just on the field that goes into that. So who do you sit? Who are you scratching? It's not just the running backs; it's special team stuff too. RD for Rico. This is not an easy question to answer. By the way, it's why I'm good. There's pros and cons for everybody. RD for Rico Dowdle, EE for Ezekiel Elliott, DC for Dalvin Cook, DV for Deuce Vaughn. One note before we go from ESPN's Dan Graziano this morning. I wanted to add it in last second. Cowboys' run game is a problem, and they know they need to get more out of it. They like the way Dalvin Cook has looked since they signed him to the practice squad and haven't ruled out the possibility of activating him to the roster if they don't get more production out of the Elliott-Dowdle tandem at some point. That move doesn't sound likely to happen this week, but if they struggle to run the ball against the Ravens on Sunday, don't be surprised if Cook ends up getting a look. Probably sums it up pretty well. That would be my expectation. I would be kind of surprised if we saw Dalvin Cook this week. But the noise will only grow louder if they can't run the ball again against Baltimore. When they're facing neutral boxes and light boxes a ton, you like to be able to run the football. Defense is daring to do. Take what the defense gives you. Haven't been able to do it for several years now.